Hey everybody. I thought this was one of the more difficult weeks to decide on the question to pick. I thought both question 2 and 4 had a lot of interesting things that you could go off of and talk about. But after a little bit of kind of reading and researching about both throughout the chapter, I decided that I was going to answer question 4. Which is, what improvements to contraceptive technology would you most like to see? And my answer to that is, I think, almost every contraceptive could use at least some, or not that they need it, but there are things that could be improved, I think, about each and every one of them. Like the first one that came to my mind was like condoms, which, are probably, I would say, the most common type. I don't really remember if the book specified that or not. But there's both like male and female condoms, and they're cheap. They're readily accessible. Most people know what they are. And one of the things that kind of condoms are pretty exclusively beneficial in is their prevention against STDs and STIs. And that's something that isn't necessarily across the board, which I'll talk about later as I go through specific contraceptives and the possible improvements to each, because that's a pretty common thing across almost every single one of them. Condoms are pretty reliable when used correctly, right? And that's part of the my thing about improvement with condoms is that a lot of the time the issue is that people don't know how to use them correctly. They don't know how to put them on correctly. They double up, which is actually less effective because it rubs against each other and can lead to breaking. So I mean, if there was a way to get around that, where it was just, there's almost no way to put it on incorrectly and almost no chance of it breaking, that's the only improvements I can see, the most big and obvious ones for condom usage. But those can also kind of be prevented by you can combine condom usage with a bunch of other types of contraceptives, such as spermicidal lubes and spermicides in general. It talks about how in the textbook it says spermicides are not exactly recommended for the sole means of contraception because their failure rate is quite high, about 25% for the foams and possibly higher. They are better suited for use in combination with a barrier method. So it's, condom plus spermicides is, a really, really effective method as long as it's used correctly. So yeah, the next one that I thought about was hormonal contraceptives, like pills and things like that. This one, my answer, as soon as I thought of the question, what contraceptives can be more effective or improved in certain ways, this was the one that immediately came to mind, because I had a little anecdote. I dated a girl who was on a hormonal birth control, and one of the side effects was it really affected her mood a lot of the time, and that was something that was really difficult for her. But there are both sides of that. It's a really effective form of contraception. The textbook says, with perfect use, combination pills are extremely reliable, which is less than 1% of women who use these pills correctly become pregnant per year. Unfortunately, it is easy to forget a pill or two, thus the typical failure rate is about 7%, which is still, it says, significantly better than that for condoms. So those are the two biggest things for me. It's easy to forget that you have a pill to take, and the side effects, I mean, again, the textbook also says frequent reported side effects include nausea, breast pain, increased breast size, irregular bleeding, abdominal pain, back pain, weight gain, blotchy discoloration of skin, emotional lability, and decreased interest in sex, or decreased or increased interest in sex. So it can like throw things all over the place. It was really tough for her sometimes when on those pills, and it was, like, that's the other thing, is it's easy to forget sometimes, which makes its effectiveness go down. The last one that I was going to talk about is the IUD, which is the textbook compares it to they're nearly as effective as female sterilization, which is incredible. Like that's nuts. And I was like looking at the statistics of the 5 brands, and like every single one is a 0.02%, except for the last one, which is 0.08% failure rate, which is ridiculous. Like that's really minor. And if you combine that with something else, like, I mean, your odds go way up. But the only thing that I think is, I don't know how you would fix this necessarily, but the only thing that I can see, like being an improvement that would, like, really, really, really change things about an IUD is if there were some ways to protect the user against STIs. And again, I have no idea how you do that. Maybe one of the more fixable issues that you can do is the one-time cost. Like the textbook says, they're typically $500 to $1,000, but they're covered by health insurance. But so if you can work your way around that, like, or figure out a way to make them cheaper, that's one of the improvements I see being most beneficial. So I am kind of right up on the time limit. That's all I had really for this discussion. I'm curious to see what you guys had to say. I thought this was a really interesting chapter, and yeah, I look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts.